After 15 years in China and traveling all around China, from north to south, from east to west, I figure out that China is much more unique and different than most of the countries I have been to. I've been in Xinjiang, Xizang, and other places. And wherever you go, you see high-speed roads, high-speed trains, hospitals, schools, water, electricity 24 hours a day, cleanliness, security, and calmness. And I wanted to understand what makes China so different from other countries. And finally I realized that China, it's something more than just a culture, because every part of China has its own culture. What makes China unique is it's more fundamental, civilization, the invisible architecture of China, which I will call this session. The invisible architecture of China, this is something that makes China unique. And this is what I have learned after 15 years here in China. Me as an engineer, when I look at the bridge or when I traveled around China, I try to figure out what's the logic behind everything I see around me. For example, when I look at the bridge, I don't see just as steel or concrete. I see the bearing logic behind the bridge. I see the vectors, the bearing point on the bridge. Same thing when I look at China. After 15 years here, I don't just see a culture. I see something more important. I see a civilization. And this is the critical difference between China and most other countries in the world. Of course, every country has a culture, food, festivals, fashion, in Sweden, in Germany, in US, but only a few places in the world have a civilization. A civilization, in my mind, is like a machine that has survived for thousands of years and constantly repairing itself. Civilization is like the bearing point on that bridge we just talked about, that keeps it together. It keeps the civilization together. So civilization is the bearing point that keeps people together. And the engine of the civilization is not the religion, which other countries have, but it kind of behavior continuity, that they behave in a certain way generation after generation. That's what brings this perfect society. In the West, the social contract was written by philosophers like Locke. I think, therefore I am. But in China, this was written by farmers and bureaucrats. I act in this way, therefore we survive. And this is the concept of something in China they call Li, Li Wu de Li. It's often translated as a form of ritual, etiquette, how to behave. But this description is too small. I think Li is the operating system behind everything we see. It tells Chinese people how to sit, how to eat, how to address your elderly, how to pour tea, the magnificent Chinese tea drinking tradition, which I love so much. Every step, every movement when drinking tea is a part of that Li operating system. And I just love looking when people prepare tea and the tea ceremony here in Guangdong. For almost 4,000 years, China did not have a single holy book that everyone read. Instead, it had a family code. The village elderly was the authority, and the respect to elderly. Why? Because survival in a civilization of several thousand, 400 million people back then, required predictability, not passion, required stability. Let me give you an engineering analogy. Western civilization built structure using faith as the foundation, strong but fragile. Chinese civilization, based on my understanding, built a different structure. They build more horizontal, a horizontal beam called family. And then you have the vertical pillars called education and hard work. And this is also when I travel to more than 180 countries. I see, now when I meet a lot of Chinese wherever I go, I see the traits in the Chinese diaspora. They are pragmatic, resilient. And when I talk to Chinese people wherever I go, they never ask me about what do I believe. They ask me, what does my family do? And what do they need right now? This is quite a different way of approach to see or interact with people. And this is the impact the Chinese civilization had on its culture. It created a low drama society and high stability society. Many Westerners look at China and Chinese people abroad and they ask, we also, on my family, we always had this subject. Why Chinese people? They are hardworking, they never create problem. Wherever they go, whichever country they go, they are very calm, work hard, and they never get angry or argue with others like we do in the street of Paris, New York, or Berlin. They miss the point. We Westerners miss the point. Because in the Chinese civilization mindset, chaos is the greatest evil. Not poverty, but chaos. So for thousands of years, stability has been and is a survival instinct. As an MBA and as an engineer, I understand risk management. Chinese civilization is the world's most successful risk management system. It sacrificed individual expression for collective survival. And this is the trade-off. So, what is the impact of the culture on the civilization? The culture created the society that values order, education, and harmony. I'm not saying one is better than the other one. I'm just saying that if you try to judge Chinese culture, Chinese values by Western rules, you and me, we Westerners, will always be wrong. To understand China, let's say nowadays everybody understands China's speed. To understand China's speed, its discipline, and its economic miracle, without understanding the Chinese civilization, it's very difficult to understand. Chinese people are not trying to just be happy. They are trying to be stable. And in stability, they found prosperity. In prosperity, they find happiness. This is how China works. I lived in 10 different countries. It's a big difference between living in a country and traveling. When you live in a country, you learn more about the culture. And I've seen the German obsession with processes, the Swedish obsession with consensus, and the Australian obsession with leisure. But only in China, I have seen a civilization that remembers 4,000 years of history every day, every time they wake up. And this is not a culture. This is something else. This is a civilization. I'm Patrick. I live like a local here in Dongguan. And I don't just study China. I learn from China.